Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. This time we're wrapping it up, the entire run of The Next Generation. We're talking about it right here on It's All Been Trek Before. Hey, want to go back and see some other stuff we did? Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Trek Before. You might not get the whole journey out there, but you get a lot more of it. You get more layers. It's a lot of fun. Follow us out there. Jump in there. You can keep up with us as we move along. We might be a little self-deprecating. That's good. It's better than self-immolating. But It's All Been Trek Before. Spelled just like it sounds. Follow us on Facebook. And now we are truly wrapping it up, the entire thing, next gen, here on It's All Been Trek Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. Your regular hosts are
This is Steven.
Heath.
Jimmy, Jerome. We are wrapping up The Next Generation as a whole, which is a big, tall order. Let's start with the question I was going to ask for our Season 7 wrap-up last week, but didn't. Did you get everything you wanted from the final season? I feel like that is relevant for the series as a whole, but we could easily put it in this episode as well. Steven had a couple thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish they'd taken bigger swings. Not necessarily in the sense of let's wrap this up, but it's just more of like, let's and obviously knowing they had films coming, but even with that, it's like, I think that's not an excuse. That's a legitimate reason for why they might have limped to the final, but that's different from me saying, you know what, I wanted you guys to close strong and just throw it all out there, and you getting into like, well, do we want to disrupt the canon or this or that? But hey, you did Sub Rosa, so canon disrupted.
I mean, I want to argue that they did not limp into the final because of All Good Things and Preemptive Strike the week before.
Yeah, they had a nice run there at the very end. Very, very.
Yeah, like just those last two episodes, because the third from last episode we put pretty low in the rankings. But I agree with you in that they should have taken some bigger swings in character development for the final season. Yeah. I do think they did the final episode right. I feel like they did that justice. They just didn't do the final season justice. If they'd gone at the final season the way they went with the series finale, we would have had a better season. And also just take the moment to say, hey, which characters have we wronged? Troy, Crusher, Geordi. Let's make that up to them in this final season. And it's really sad that you have 7 main characters and I was just able to name 3 that you did not do justice to for the series.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that right now. Let's talk about who was done right and who was done wrong. Of the 7, there were technically 9 main characters, but 7 that lasted 6 seasons or more, because Crusher wasn't there for season 2. I think they did dirty. Crusher and Geordi for sure. Troy, arguably. I think they did Picard, Riker, Data, and Worf pretty decently.
Yeah.
And I would put Wesley in the middle because he got done decently sometimes and sometimes not. And I would rank Yar in like middle lower, like some middle, some lower for her brief span.
Everything after the tar creature got to her, I thought
was great.
Yeah.
When you only get to bring her back for small bits, you do it well.
So okay, that's
the
true.
Way
at first I thought that was a joke, but when I thought no, she actually did show up, and that's true.
As Yar and as Sela, I think those are both legit.
Yes, yeah.
Which Sela was a character she pitched, which just impresses me at all end, and the fact that they listened to her impresses me at all end. Do you agree, disagree with my ranking of these characters they did well, these characters they did poorly, these characters they middled?
Agreed.
I think that's pretty accurate assessment.
I would say of the reoccurring, O'Brien, they did pretty well. Better after he left the series, but pretty well. Glad they brought him back for the series finale. He deserved it. Glad they did it. Whoopi and Ro, Guinan and Ro, they both did well, but they both deserved a lot more appearances than they got.
Sure. Barclay was fun. I thought he got done well for every episode. I thought of his was.
What's great about Barclay is he does have a couple movie appearances. They're brief. He has a couple, but he gets several episodes of Voyager where he is the focus. So we're not done with Barclay.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And those are really good episodes. So I'm excited that we're not. When you have an actor like Dwight Schultz, despite recent events, don't look at his Wikipedia page, as we mentioned before. Seriously, you should use him to his abilities, and I thought Next Gen did a pretty decent job of it, but he was always a secondary character, and I'm glad that people, powers that be, recognize that this is a gold mine we're not done digging in. Let's dig in it some more.
Yeah.
I want to, despite his Wikipedia page, I would really like Barclay to show up in New Trek and actually dig into that. I think that would be excellent. That character, it's the first Star Trek character where we really get into mental health issues and stuff. Barclay, to me, like I said, I think Voyager actually does him better than Next Gen, but Barclay to me is one of those characters that's begging for follow-up. I'd put him and Ro at the top of my list of characters I want to revisit in New Trek from Next Gen. We'll talk about DS9 later, but from Next Gen, Barclay, Ro, Guidance appeared in New Trek, so I hesitate to call her out, but I want more from her anyway because I love Whoopi. But Ro and Barclay, more, please.
Do you think New Trek is too woke for
For the actor, yes, but the character is such.
No, yeah.
And I do think, as far as I remember, maybe I'm misremembering, he hasn't done anything to the point where they couldn't bring him back, like that they have to distance himself.
Yeah.
I mean, the actor.
Right.
They could still just
I don't think
recast
Star
him
Trek
too.
needs to distance themselves from that actor enough not to bring him back. And maybe I'm forgetting or missing something. Right. But I think despite his political beliefs.
He was wounded and his face got changed.
Despite his political beliefs, I know it's too late to affect Star Trek Discovery Season 5. By the time the Sayers Discovery is done, even though we haven't seen it all yet. But Starfleet Academy, Barclay hologram, I'm all in.
As we've learned too many times, thanks to me and us getting on the internet, a lot of really good actors who we don't like their political views, but ain't that America, you know, and still enjoy their performances, and that's.
And not just actors, Smash Mouth.
Yeah. Hey now.
Fans, people.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Close family members of mine. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
In terms of the question I had first said, what we didn't get from the final season, I just wanted more character development than we got. I think Steven's comment of bigger swings is right in line with what I'm saying.
Yeah, and not even from we've talked quite a bit about, if it was now, if it was more serialized and that kind of stuff. But I thought it had gotten better with that kind of character development stuff. And I mentioned it last week, but in that last season, other than the really good episodes, it felt more like, okay, this week we're just not necessarily doing characters to these guys, but we're not developing them anymore. It's like, okay, this week, again, disease of the week, plan of the week, whatever of the week, as opposed to more of a through line and stuff. I know we couldn't get through lines, but that said, if you look at the series as a whole, you can see characters obviously developing over time. But like Picard, a lot of payoff for what he went through those first 6 seasons. I thought,
oh my God, him sitting at the poker table in the finale was so rewarding. And then, I always thought about joining. You always would have been welcome. I'm sorry, I'm tearing up now. Yeah. When Troy says you were always welcome.
Yeah.
That to me, those two lines, that two-line interchange
great.
Is so that's probably my favorite two-line interchange in the entire 7 seasons.
Yeah. And so you can't do that every episode, obviously, but you can do more of that.
Yes.
For that development to make that even more resounding, more earned. But yeah,
I mean, there's some good stuff in the 4 films, but if we had finished the 7th season before Star Trek Picard season 3, I think I'd be even more excited by Star Trek Picard season 3. And I'm sorry, Keith, you might want to turn off your headphones for 20 seconds, but you probably already know. But when they ran the Star Trek Picard season 3 trailers, and it wasn't the first 2 seasons, but season 3, starring Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, Marina Sirtis, Gates McFadden, Brett Spiner, LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn.
Yeah.
The feels.
Oh, yeah.
And the overdueness of that.
And not necessarily just from a nostalgic thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and most of the people we've talked about like being highlights of the series appear in that as well. Not all of them, but most of them.
And getting to do good stuff.
Patrick Stewart is really trying to sell them on one more next gen movie now, whether it's TV movie or theatrical. And I am 100% on board.
Yeah.
I know you haven't seen Picard yet, Steven, and that's fine. Honestly, at this point, I don't think you should, because besides next gen references, one of the main characters is 7 of 9 from Voyager, and because we're about to start Voyager, you should probably just wait.
Yeah.
Because she figures prominently into all 3 seasons of Star Trek Picard. So you want that 7th season build up. Well, she's not in the beginning of the series, but you want the Voyager build up to that, to her character, because it's huge payoff. And I love that character. I am dying that they have not greenlit Star Trek Legacy. The producers have been talking behind the scenes. And by now, hopefully, by the time this actually airs, because we're recording this April 15th, 2024. I want to set that right now because I know Alex Kurtzman, who's running New Trek, basically, overall, has said, like, look, if it were up to just me, I would have greenlit Star Trek Legacy already. Like, that will be if it gets greenlit, that is the actual sequel series to Star Trek Picard without Picard, or at least not as a main character. And I want it so bad. Let's go ahead and rank Next Gen against TOS and TAS, the animated series. Ranking the series, I think this is super easy to do personally.
I will give my not surprising TOS, TNG, TAS. So I still think TOS, I'm reminded of, and I can't remember you guys that shared it, or I saw it on one of the other Star Trek sites somewhere, the Fry from Futurama saying, there's only 30 good ones out of every 79. So, and I feel like TNG hit that for 176 episodes. I think it hit around there. Probably higher than that, because I do think there's more than 30. I guess it depends on what you mean by good, But as opposed to, are you saying great or good? But anyway, so yeah, that's where I land. Obviously, I have bias or nostalgic bias and whatever we've talked about. But yeah, and we've talked about how I feel like people in my life are like, oh yeah, you guys doing TNG now, blah blah blah, and a lot of people that listen to they don't necessarily engage us on Facebook or whatever, but they definitely are like, oh yeah, I heard you guys talking about that. I'm like, wait, you listen to the show? Which is nice.
What?
But a lot more of them, the younger people, and not necessarily all younger people, but maybe just not as old as me, but are them. This was Trek, and then they're like, oh, I'm gonna go find this old thing. This was TOS, but yeah, so that's not surprisingly, that's where I land. But and it's obviously worlds ahead of TA animated series. Now, when we finish DS9 and all that stuff, that's when things will start getting really interesting. But we've got a long way to go with I've got a long way to go with DS9.
5 seasons. We're 2/7 of the way through it.
Yeah. So
I do genuinely wonder, now that I've watched TOS in full, which I had not done before this podcast, if I'm going to be more divided on my ranking, because I've always maintained DS9's number 1.
Something I thought about, again with obviously when I was watching TOS, there wasn't any other Trek, and it was in constant syndication. So, and there was only 79 episodes. So I've seen lots of those, especially the best ones, 10, 12, 15 times, maybe more, as opposed to the TNG episodes. It's pretty much been a one and done. And there's several of them just going through and thinking of the best ones, like, oh, you know what? I'd like to rewatch that one and rewatch that one. And there's already a couple of the DS9 ones that I've liked a lot. So I think that'll definitely, not even from a nostalgic bias, but just from a, when we were ranking season 7, when we were struggling, like, oh, which one was that? And we, as we always do, like, I don't have a problem doing that with the original Trek 1, great titles, but 2, just because, I'm so familiar with them. I can think of them like, songs off of Abbey Road kind of a thing that I've seen them so much. But
I do think what the one difficulty here is, when I think of TOS, I cannot separate the movies. And I do think overall the movies are better than the show. Overall.
Better. Rathacon is one of the best things ever done, period.
Oh, easily. But I think at least like 3 or 4 of the 6 films are better than every episode of the show. Like, and I do wonder how ranking Next Gen now is going to play into when we add 4 films. Like when we're ranking Voyager against the series, and then we're thinking of the 4 Next Gen films, how it's going to play. And I do think, even though we're going to go ahead and rank the TV series now, I think we should. But I do think the Next Gen films get lumped into the Next Gen series in terms of this ranking. We're not going to rank the films separately. Yeah. I mean, we can rank the films right now. I'll tell you the TOS films are better than the TNG films, hands down. They just are. And the Star Trek 2009 films are the third of the 3 film series. They're the third. Like, they're the animated series. We've got TOS films, TNG films, and then the JJ spin-off films. Yeah. Easily, that's the ranking. You're not going to disagree with me, I guarantee you.
Well,
however, ranking the series right now, and I even have the knowledge of all 4 Next Gen films, which I've seen repeatedly. I am 100% in agreement with you, Steven. And it's because the highs of original series, Next Gen never hit them. I do think All Good Things was the closest they came, and we'll rank the episodes of Next Gen later. I think All Good Things was great, but I think the original series had higher highs. It did have lower lows.
Yes.
But because it's a brand new thing taking big swings, we talked about this, taking big swings. You wanted that more from Next Gen. I did too. You give TOS the edge, animated series an obvious third.
And there's that thing Keith's talked about a lot, which is TOS in a way. I mean, there wasn't the first sci-fi show ever, but it was the first Trek. And so speaking of swings, they got the first bite, the first swing at these things, and they crushed it, so quite often. So, yeah.
And honestly, 55 plus years later, Star Trek is truly the only sci-fi franchise. I mean, I'm sure there's a one-off or something, but it's the only significant science fiction entry in books, film, TV, any of those categories that looks to the future optimistically. And that really sets it apart of humanity will be better, because nobody else does that. Anybody that has not had the success Star Trek has. Every other major science fiction franchise is dystopian, not utopian. Star Trek does its share of dystopian, and we haven't got to a lot of that. DS9 does its share of dystopia, and those are the parts of DS9 I love, honestly. But I also love the utopian ideals of Star Trek overall, and that's what's bumming me out about the world today.
Discovery almost feels dystopian at times, but
through a utopian lens. Wait, Discovery is dystopia through a utopian lens.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah. All right, Keith. Now we'll let you talk.
You've seen Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I've seen all of it. All of it. I know what
Everything.
I know what you're doing. I love it. I love it. Do you have anything to say to disagree with our TOS, TNG, TAS rankings?
Well, yeah, I mean TNG for me the top. It's just it's just the way my taste works is the newer things usually keep piling on it. That means I prefer like the newer Trek to TNG, like the newer generation Trek series is. It's just the way my taste evolves with whether with what's happening. Usually, it's just I'm not saying that.
To be frank, Keith, the only new Trek series I might rank lower to TNG in this moment, early on, but in this moment, the only new Trek series I'd rank lower than TNG is Discovery. So, I guess I sort of agree with you in that recency area.
I'm going to. I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of it is more like stylistic choices or stylistic preferences that change along with things, and it's hard for me to describe. Well, no, actually, I guess it isn't. It's in the phrase we use a lot, which is that didn't age well, and there's just a certain kind of way that the world was looking at things, or despite whatever the writers were trying to do, they were still part of something that they couldn't escape or even see past until we get to where we are now. And that's what I mean.
I really want you to explain, sell us / whatever. Why does Next Gen outrank TOS for you?
But the same thing, right? So as I was hinting, or not hinting, I guess alluding in the previous episode, season 1, I think one of the reasons why we didn't like it as much as the rest of the series is because they were trying to do something that didn't fit in the current climate and the current, the then climate and the then world. The way the acting came across felt stilted by comparison to the way things had moved on. When you have something like that's airing in the 60s and 70s, there's just a certain kind of, again, it's the way everything is framed in a certain way that is it's kitsch without meaning to be kitsch. You see what I'm saying? And
Okay.
I think they were trying to go for that, and it wasn't working with what they wanted to try to express differently, or with the way that the messages needed to be updated, the way they needed to compete with the shows that were on at the time. And so once they started to flesh out what the modern day perspective or lens would see as being like normal delivery, and even now we go back to then compare it to the way people speak now, the way that they're used to seeing things happen, that feels off. You see, there's something that just kind of everything has to keep being updated to a certain point. The types of stories they're telling, the way that all right, so there are certain kinds of tropes that became tropes because of the things they had to try to do at the beginning. I mean, they were less so when TOS was tackling them, which is remarkable, and that's good. They started off certain kinds of things like that.
Mhm.
But let's take like let this be your last battlefield. Is that the half black, half white? Yeah,
Yes.
that
Not a
is
great episode.
right. But the point, that's the reason for that, is because of the types of people they were speaking to then. It probably wouldn't have seemed quite as bad to us or as obvious or whatever. We talked about this, I think, at the time during the episode. The mindsets they were dealing with. I don't know. I guess. All right. So I think the challenge goes both ways. So if you're starting off and you're the pioneer, you're dealing with uncharted territory, of course, and you're doing things for the first time.
Where no one's gone before.
I don't know if we go that far, but
I like that you said no one instead of the TOS version.
So, all right. So that also, in a sense, works to the disadvantage of the newer things, because now, I mean, both to the advantage and the disadvantage. The advantage is they get to build upon something that's been established. The disadvantage is now they have to make it fresher in a certain way, or something's going to start seeming stale, or you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We get to certain episodes in TNG and it feels like, oh, but we've seen this before because double, that kind of thing. And they're going on for longer. And so certain other things start to feel recycled. I mean, they're making variations. It is more difficult to be innovative when you're newer, but they're still managing to do it.
Yeah.
Which means that they also have to it's like their hands are tied from something else. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Well,
and then there are certain kinds of issues that wouldn't have even existed, or certain kinds of technology that wouldn't have been conceived of, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you keep moving on, get to more modern day things, and they had to go back and rethink. Wait, well, this doesn't really make any sense because the way we're headed right now, it's not going to go to this. The projection, this is less advanced than what we're envisioning. Then so we have to then redirect, reconfigure. Yeah. Course correct. There it is.
I mean, to be honest, I know we haven't gone through our best episodes of Next Gen yet, or about to in a second. But when I look at the 5 best episodes of the original series, which, as a reminder, are City on the Edge of Forever, The Cage, Journey to Babel, Mirror Mirror, and Trouble with Tribbles, I do not rank a single Next Generation episode above those 5. When we look at the bottom, and the Children Shall Lead, Spock's Brain, Alternative Factor, Lights of Zeta, Tomorrow's Yesterday, I have to think about, the Shades of Grey belong in the middle of those 5? And I don't want to blow my load here now, but does Aquiel belong in the middle of those 5? Absolutely. So to my mind, the worst episodes of Next Gen were down with the worst episode of the original, like intermixed, and if we're looking at worst episodes of Trek overall. But the best episodes of Star Trek, again, we'll get to everybody's rankings, but for me, All Good Things is number 1. And it does not beat any of those 5 best original series episodes. So that's where I rank TOS above TNG. But we're going to rank episodes for TNG in a minute. But yeah, that's my only counter argument to your argument, but I really like hearing your way of thinking of why you have TNG above TOS. Because you're ranking this differently than Steven and I really wanted to get into what your process was.
You also have to consider, I mean, the elephant in the room, that I feel things probably more viscerally differently because of the way the times had changed by then.
Sure.
And there's a difference between saying, the words of saying that we want to make everything equal and do all these other things, and then actually following through with it.
Yeah.
This it goes back to what I'm trying to say before. It's not necessarily the writer's fault. Certainly not Roddenberry's, not any of the actors. Not they just.
It's definitely DC Fontana's fault, though.
she's going to prove you wrong eventually.
I'm glad that landed.
I think also, in a way, speaking of differences, TOS was on NBC, so they had different masters than TNG did. Although
which was on
masters too, and
syndication.
Even with New Trek, it's like, well, they're streaming and they're making a bunch of money, but then it's still, as we talked about earlier, but even they're, things are getting rolled back. So, and that kind of gets to your point, Keith, of like, well, the time you're in does influence at some point, which I think my favorite of, and this is also because I'm a TOS fan. Oh, I'm a fan of all of it, but Strange New Worlds for me is like, you cannot synthesize TOS with modern Trek better than that.
What if TNG had been reboot instead of new characters? I think
instead of a continuation.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and I think that again,
that'd be awful.
I think there was such like, we want our Trek people, that I think that I think we've talked about that gets into season 1. They brought back all the original writers, and then finally in season 2 they got rid of all those guys more or less, and finally got to
and McCoy. They brought back McCoy in the pilot.
Yeah. So they finally got to do like, we're gonna do our own thing within this thing. So
which they needed to, honestly.
Oh, for
no,
sure.
You're right. I was going to ask Jimmy to expand on that reaction, but I think it would have been too soon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You still, I mean, there were still TOS movies airing, right? So that was
right.
The 5th and 6th TNG or TOS films aired during the Next Generation's run.
Yeah. So, the backlash probably would have been too great for something like that at the time. But
you could not pick up, and I know comics have and other things have, but you could not pick up in the 4th and 5th years of the original Voyage with a new cast. You just couldn't have in the 80s. If you did it now, I'd argue if you got the right cast, you could do it well. And I do think you can use
they're doing
Uhura and Spock and Chapel from Strange New Worlds and do it. But you can't. And I really like Kirk from Strange New Worlds too. And Scotty. But I'm not saying they should do it. I'm just saying they could do it now.
Right.
They could
right.
And obviously in 2009 they did it, and
and it was awful.
But I don't think it was because of that. It was because of something else. I'm also biased because of just familiarity. I mean, it's going to be hard for me to do, but I would like to do it at some point. I actually need to go back and watch TOS again to cement things in my head, because I can't keep them in my head the same way that I can with TNG because of the number of times I'd seen it when it was actually airing.
And
so
just
it makes the comparisons harder.
As a series, I was much more familiar with TNG than TOS, and I still rank TOS above. But that's a difference between us. Just
to put a,
and I am keeping a spreadsheet with the series rankings. And while I put Steven and I's in agreement, I went ahead and added Keith to the spreadsheet. So when we're ranking DS9 in a few years, we'll remember that Keith ranked Next Gen above, and we can talk about that.
So I watched a half an hour of Star Trek: The Motion Picture last week.
Only half an hour? How?
Well, I was in a hotel and I was checking out, and I'm just going through. I'm like, wait a minute, what? So
I was going to say
he would have got out half an hour earlier, but I'm like,
he was just watching the bit where they were circling around the ship.
Well, it was right after that, actually. And,
the half hour of anyway, sorry.
Well, I accept Steven's explanation.
Just to that point, even then, people are like, who's Ilea and Decker? What are these guys doing here? Even though Decker,
Troy and Riker. They're Troy and
Yeah,
Riker.
right, exactly. But even then, people are like, these guys, they're taking time away from the people I want to see. And I'm like, well, I get that, but still. So that
No.
kind of gets the point of
No.
yeah. So they were wrong
As a
then.
motion picture apologist, screw them.
No, I agree. I'm there with you.
I know you do. I
No,
know
wait,
you
wait,
do.
wait, Steven. So that's how you felt at the time?
That's not how I felt. That's how a lot of the people, the same people I think that were mad about Next Generation having a whole new cast, they didn't like seeing Decker and Ilea.
Well, that's what I mean.
I was never unhappy to see Persis Kambata. I can assure you of that in any context. But no, I was like, no, this makes sense. It's 10 years later. Totally makes sense that things would have changed. But
oh, God, I love the motion picture.
But
so
also to a lot of people, it's like, no, I've been watching this the last 3 or 4 years. It totally those people should be able to walk right on. It's like, no, not exactly. It's obviously more interesting if but anyway.
Let's get back to Next Gen. Sorry. We need to rank the best and worst episodes of Next Gen. I'm not sure what the easiest way to do this is, except I have my list. I'm sure Steven has his list.
I do.
Keith, do you already have a list of the 7 and best and 7 worst?
I have a loose
or you
idea.
just want to listen to ours and then
a little bit of both. I mean, I've been kind of going back and forth through the spreadsheet and thinking about it, and it's hard because of just the titles again. It helps that the extremes as you're reading, those are usually end up being more memorable because of that, which is helpful.
Well, so since Steven and I are more solidified on our list, Steven, I'm going to give you the option. One of us will go first on the best. One of us will go first on the worst. Which one do you want?
I'll go first on the worst.
Okay, let's start with the worst then. What are your 7 worst from worst to 7th worst?
Okay. I did go with Shades of Grey.
Disagreed already, but okay.
Yeah. Code of Honor was next.
We just got 1 and 2 reversed, but we're agreed on what the bottom 2 are. Wait, before you continue, Keith, 1 and 2, are we correct?
See, all right, here's the problem. The way that I can't rank things like that.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't have a favorite anything. I don't have a least favorite. But I mean, I can give you like a pool of these are probably this is among this and this is among that. And
that's kind of what I did. Keith was like, you know what? If you ask me tomorrow, I might have a different 7 or not. Well, definitely not a different 7 altogether. But ordered differently, or there might be a couple different ones. But yeah, it was just looking at a similar thing, like looking at it, like, okay, what's my feel on this? Because like my number 1 episode, I think was our number 4 episode of one of the seasons. But I'm like, you know what? That's the one that I just have a good feel for, and it also gets back to what we talked about last week, rewatchability maybe also, which is an interesting thing of quality versus rewatchability, because like just to set things in the modern world. And this year, like Zone of Interest was a fascinating, great movie that came out this year it was Oscar nominated and won a best sound and maybe best screenplay. Anyway, I don't know anyone that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go see that again. Their job isn't being a movie reviewer, but
you made me think of something that I wanted to say earlier, or rather in our previous recording. Steven, you had mentioned something along those lines, genre films and awards and so forth, and just that's something that's always going to bother me. And bringing up something like an Endgame, and it's just like, well, nope, it's disqualified because we don't think this is serious. The source material is this, and it's like, but you're essentially de-incentivizing everyone, like across the board. You get people doing Oscar bait movies who don't have to try in a certain way because this is just automatically this. Or you're encouraging other people to just phone in other things, or even they have to really feel it. They have to really be passionate about doing a comic book movie, and just giving it their all and having fun and being there for its own sake.
Yeah.
But then you're like, you get what I'm saying. It's just you're a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what it is.
Yeah. Continue your list, Steven, of worst episodes.
Sub Rosa.
Totally in agreement. I'm in agreement. I had Sub Rosa as number 3 as well.
Number 4, Imaginary Friend.
Oh, and that's number 5, but okay.
Number 5, Galaxy's Child.
Whoa, that wasn't in my bottom 7. Okay.
Number 6, Schisms, and number 7.
That was my number 6 as well.
Yeah. And number 7, I had Interface.
Steven and I's bottom was pretty close because we had Shades of Honor and Code of Grey reversed. Sub Rosa equal, right? Imaginary Friend, Schism, and the Interface, his 4, 6, 7 were my 5, 6, 7.
All right.
What I had for number 4 that didn't appear in his list because Galaxy's Child doesn't appear in mine was Aquiel.
That's
I had Aquiel for number 4, right in the middle of my worst of list.
And I think that's a good assessment. For some reason, I kept looking at it like, I know we didn't like it, but yeah. But
honestly, Steven, with 178 episodes or whatever, the fact that we got 6 of the 7 in alignment, roughly, even if we're slightly different on the scale, is pretty impressive in my opinion.
Yeah.
Keith, we're going to make you break it. The tie. Shades of Grey or Code of Honor, which one's worse?
Shades of Grey is the clip episode.
The flashback, the clip show.
Yeah, I mean that's automatically worse in my opinion.
Or Codes of Honor, which is super racist.
Yeah.
That it's going to be Shades of Grey.
Okay.
The clip episode.
I admit defeat on that. Shades of Grey is the worst episode of the series for our rankings. Code of Honor, second. Steve and I were agreed on Sub Rosa. Do you want to disagree, or are we good at putting Sub Rosa as 3rd worst overall?
That's going to be down there. That's just.
We just put it, or do you want to?
I'm fine with that. I'm still just trying to sort through some of these other things in my head. But that's so fresh though. That's so like I can see this. Oh, this is why I did not like that, and yeah.
So from there, let's go to where Steven and I disagreed, the 2 episodes that we had different. I had Aquiel, he had Galaxy's Child. Do you think one of those is worse than the other? Do you think something else we haven't mentioned? Because remember, Imaginary Friend, Schism, and the Interface, we both agree should be in the bottom 7. We're trying to come up with we may not come up with a bottom 7 for the 3 of us overall, but I'm going to try real quick, if we can do it quick. Do you agree Imaginary Friend, Schisms, and Interface probably belong in the bottom 7?
Yes. Wait. Well,
okay.
Depending on what Interface was.
Interface is Geordi's mom.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. So we're agreeing that those 3 belong. So what we're trying to decide, if we're going to come with the consensus, is should the 7th one, and it doesn't have to be the 7th place.
Right.
We'll argue where it goes. But should it be Aquiel, Galaxy's Child, or something else?
Which one was Galaxy's Child? Is that one of the space alien?
Is the Leah Brahms one.
Oh,
and that's why it got sunk.
Pretty bad one. Pretty bad one, Steven. I'm not disagreeing. It's definitely down there for me. If we're doing bottom 10, I probably would have ranked it in there. I just didn't have in the bottom 7.
Yeah.
Aquiel, the Geordi creepiness, dating the hologram, wanting to date the dead woman. To me, ranked lower.
I remember it didn't bother me nearly as much for whatever reason. I would need to see it again it just didn't seem that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to dig into that.
So you think Galaxy's Child is a better entry into the bottom 7?
Or Aquiel. Or something else.
Honestly, I'd probably go with something else if I could find it off the top of my head. But
do you know? You've got the charts. Do you have something else you want to argue for the bottom 7?
What would Power Play have been? I need to look at that.
Troy, Dana, and O'Brien are enveloped by a strange cloud that affects changes in their personalities and causes them to
I see Dana's trying to strangle Picard.
I think that might be it.
You want to put Power Play in the bottom 7?
I think I dislike that more than like all the other things we've been mentioning as far as like the Geordi ones, and just I understand why they're. I think those are the Geordi episodes are like higher profile bad, but this is something that's like.
Yeah.
Can I suggest a compromise in the sake so we don't spend 3 hours on this?
So like
let's put in the 4th of 7 slots, right in the middle, a 3-way tie between Aquiel, Galaxy's Child, and Power Play. And then we agree that Imaginary Friend, Schism's Interface finishes out the bottom 7.
Sure.
Yep.
That way we basically all get what we want.
I like that.
So it's technically bottom 10, but it's a consensus ranking. Okay.
Why is it 7
we all
anyway?
agree these 10 are bad episodes, right? Nobody wants to argue why these 10 doesn't belong in the bottom 10, right?
Nah.
No.
Okay. Then I think we're good there. Best overall. Steven went first on worst, so I'm going to go first on best. I've got All Good Things as number 1, followed by Measure of a Man, going back to season 2, followed by Lower Decks, staying in season 7, followed by Chain of Command Part 2, Picard being tortured by the Cardassians, followed by The Inner Light, followed by Family, ending with Tapestry, because I think 4 of the 7 should be Picard-centric, apparently. Let's start with, I think because Keith didn't rank them, let's give Steven his top 7, and then we'll figure out where Keith fits in.
Yeah, so I've got several of those, and several of those I flirted with, if you will. So
yeah.
I've got All Good Things, number 6, Tapestry, number 4, Lower Decks, number 3.
Wait. All Good Things is number 6?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I enjoyed it, but
Wow.
So I was going on a feel thing for sure on this.
Okay, Tapestry, number 4.
So
What'd you say was number 3?
I'm very malleable on these. I have Lower Decks at number 3.
Well, we agreed on that, so we might just keep it number 3. We'll see.
Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty malleable on these. I have, just looking through them, like, I have a hard time being like.
Let's just do your number 1 through 7. What's number 1?
Sure. So number 1, Yesterday's Enterprise.
That's a good one. I did not include, but that's a good one.
It's got TOS elements in a way, and I thought it did, and the return of Tasha Yar. Number 2, Best of Both Worlds, which I know people love, and I did as well.
Which one? Part 1 or 2?
Part
1, right?
Part 1, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Lower Decks 3, Tapestry 4. 5, I have Unification. Again, that's a TOS bias coming in.
Part 1 or 2?
Part 1.
Okay.
6, I have All Good Things. And then 7, this is really just for fun. So this one can definitely push aside. Justice. So.
Gosh. that was number 14 for season 1.
Yeah, if I wasn't just doing it for fun, I'd probably go in Family as well, because that one was one I looked at really closely as well.
So I the thing about Yesterday's Enterprise, which I really liked, was re-ranked at number 4 for season 3. So I didn't even look at it because I was looking at the number 1s and the number 2s. Yeah. It's a good call though. It's a really good episode.
But Inner Lights is a great episode, and
you didn't have Inner Light.
Also,
you didn't have Inner Light. You didn't have Family, but you said that was like your number 8-ish.
Yeah, or it would have been number 7 if I didn't have Justice in there for fun.
Chain of Command, you did not have in there.
I did not have those either. Yeah,
but you agree they're good episodes.
Yeah. All those are very good episodes.
Well, it's what's his name from Star Trek 5?
David Warner.
David Warner, yes, thank you. And Star Trek 6. 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So we both have, I have All Good Things as number 1. Steven has number 6. Keith, we're not going to spend a ton of time getting a consensus. If we don't get one, we don't get one. But do you think All Good Things, I'm just going to give you All Good Things or Yesterday's Enterprise or something else. What's the best episode of the series?
Yeah, I guess, Keith, is there an episode in your mind you're like, oh, this, you guys didn't mention this one, that should be?
I might actually do one of the Dixon Hills, maybe even the Elementary My Dear Data.
Number 1?
Not number 1, but it just, I mean, I thought you were just like in the mix. For the first, I don't know. It just, All Good Things is probably one of the best arguments for me as far as that's one that doesn't, that feels good there.
Okay.
But
so as an overall consensus, we're going to put All Good Things. But for number 2, keep in mind, Steven had Yesterday's Enterprise for his number 1. He had Best of Both Worlds Part 1 for number 2. I had Measure of a Man. Any of those? Or you want to pick something else for number 2-ish?
It
is hard. It is absolutely hard.
I thought about Measure of a Man as well. That was one that...
Yeah. Best of Both Worlds is a great episode. I'm honestly, Steven, I have no knocking of your list. I'd say Justice and Unification, I'm not in love with. But the other 5...
Yeah.
Best of Both Worlds, I didn't even put in my top 7, but I understand and agree. I don't disagree with you that Best of Both Worlds belongs up there, right? Like, and again, Yesterday's Enterprise, I have in my top 7, but now I'm looking at it and I'm like, ooh, that was a really good episode. Where would I put that? I might put that as a close 8th. I don't know that I'm willing to bump into my top 7, but it's really high up there. But let's see if we can get some consensus-ish. If we don't get it, we don't get it. We got a consensus on worst pretty well.
I thought that
with
would
that
be
three-way tie agreement. Keith, Measure of Man, Yesterday's Enterprise, Best of Both Worlds, something else.
For second, you're saying, just to like the
Yes,
slots?
for second. We put All Good Things as number one now because you and I agreed on it.
That's impossible for me at this point. I mean, I'm just still like gathering the things I would even put in the top 7. Because I mean, there's like what Iborg. I mean, that would
Iborg's a great episode, but we put it number 4 for season 5. Which, granted, season 5 was our best season, and that was Unification 1, 2, followed by Inner Light, followed by Iborg, followed by Redemption 2, followed by Instant Row.
Yeah,
best 6 episodes of a run in a season.
I looked at Iborg too when I was looking at these, or as I call it, one Borg. But yeah.
I'm surprised. I like the episode a lot. I was doing this about the title.
I'm surprised Lower Decks isn't higher up as well.
We both have it at number 3.
Yeah.
So if you really like Lower Decks, we can put it as a number 2 consensus.
I'm not going to fight that. Yeah.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Lower Decks we're going to put as our number 2 consensus under All Good Things because we all 3 really liked it. After that, if you can't agree, we don't have to come to consensus tonight. But I think we're pretty good on All Good Things 1, Lower Decks 2, even though Steve and I had 3 because Keith and just the disagreements. I think that's a good number 2 consensus.
Yeah.
And both of those top 2 in the final season, which we ranked dead last in seasons.
Right. That's what we said. It had high highs and a lot of
Right. Who was the most annoying, or what was the most annoying part of The Next Generation?
Ooh.
I'm going to jump out right up front and say lack of character development. While we had our Worfs and our Rikers that got developed, overall, characters did not develop much on Next Gen.
That is, I definitely agree with that, but I was worried you're going to make us pick a person, though. Just
you can if you want to, but I'm going to go with character development. If I had to pick a person, I don't know that I could.
Same. Again,
yeah, this actually helps me with my decision because the people that I have for most annoying are also people that I end up enjoying. Like Geordi, we talked about, early on, it's like, who is this jerk? And then it's like, but at the same time, in a way, likable, and maybe that just speaks to LeVar Burton. And then Riker also, who I obviously love. He's the Kirk guy, but also there's just looking at the list, it's like, oh, I got mad at him in a lot of episodes, and that may be the writers. This will not be surprising. Q is also on there, but also, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, I think for the season finale for All Good Things, when Q's on, he's on. I love him, so it's hard for me to make him the most annoying. So I'm gonna go with somebody or a thing. Their batting average probably isn't as good, and that's the holodeck. So
holodeck's a fair point.
Yeah,
I'll put that in as your annoyance of the series.
Yeah,
I totally agree with what you were saying overall. Geordi, if we were going for the main characters, Geordi's probably my most annoying. Crusher was the most underwritten, but Geordi was the most poorly written. LeVar Burton deserved better. If I was going to go crime of the series, LeVar Burton being poorly written might be my crime of the series.
So not Moriarty?
No, because LeVar Burton is such a phenomenal actor.
No, I was
and
making
to get the crap that he got.
No,
I know what you're saying. Seriously, I love LeVar Burton deeply in my soul. And the crap that he got was just unjustifiable. Like, I really wonder now. I know he gets a little bit of stuff in the movies that's fun, but I really wonder now why LeVar Burton even gives a crap about Star Trek. I felt like they did him dirty. And I'm including the films and his Star Trek Picard arc. I am. Like, not that they didn't try to make up for it, but it was too little too late. He deserves a Star Trek Geordi series to fix it.
I can't think of a worst at the moment.
Okay. That's fine. Or annoyance or okay. Who are we having a drink with for the series overall?
Is that what the favorite person would be?
It could be. That's a valid argument to make, but
I was just looking at the list.
Somebody you want to commiserate with. Like, for instance, I'm not going to choose this, but LeVar Burton could have justifiably been my choice because he was so badly done that like, oh, I want to go get a drink with him because they wronged him in such a severe way.
Depending on how you look at it, like I went to I'm just looking back to the list, like Mrs. Apgar and my Seinfeld list, Brenda Strong.
Sure.
God, I'm totally blanking on their real and their spectacular. Oh, Terry Hatcher. But I ended up landing on either Riker or Troy. And right now I think Riker. I'm gonna hang out with that guy.
It's funny you say that because I'm choosing Riker as well. I feel like he possibly more than you could argue Picard went through a good character arc in the series from like buttoned up, whatever by the book, not gonna get close to this crew. And I really think the backstory of him with the Stargazer influences that. Like he went through a tragic captainship, so he's gonna keep a distance in a way he didn't before when Jack Crusher died. But I'm gonna go with Riker as well, because Riker had this really cool arc of being the young, brash upstart who realized he could learn better from his superiors and gave up captainships to stay with Picard and took the time to understand each of the other characters. So I'm going with Riker because I love him, and not just because Jonathan Frakes is certainly the most prolific Star Trek director.
Yeah.
Which he is. From the old Trek, from the films, from the new Trek, Frakes is the most prolific director.
That's true, yeah. So that's where I landed.
We're in agreement on Riker. You and I. Keith.
Yeah. That was one of the first names that popped in my head, interestingly enough. I was going to say that also reminded me, but while I'm thinking about it, that's the episode that I forgot that I wanted to say during the top 7 would be the ship exchange where he was captain of the Klingon
Great
ship.
episode.
Yeah, that's up there.
Which was that called?
It's just looking at that.
Yes, it's just
A Matter of Honor.
Yes, that was our number 2 of season 2.
Yeah,
right behind Measure of a Man.
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh well, that's it. I think that's a good enough choice for right now. I think
you're going with Riker.
Yeah.
Wow. Seriously, at the beginning of the series, if you'd asked me who we were going to agree as a consensus was who we wanted to drink with for the series, I don't think I would have thought of Riker.
Certainly not episode 1 Riker.
No, but man, I'm very happy with this. Very happy.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this up real quick, but do the tropes hold true of Next Gen? Wesley's annoying. What other tropes do we have to talk about? I don't know. But do the tropes of Next Gen hold true? I think the Wesley annoyance did not hold that far true, but I think his rap for the series did a long way to perpetuate that stereotype.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's not as annoying as he's played out to be, but I can, from the perspective of watching it then and now, I guess, I can see people feeling like he was shoehorned in there. But I can see that feeling. I don't think that plays out in the episodes.
Yeah.
Here or there.
Like the very end.
His last one. But
so tropes, probably not. I don't know what other tropes. Were there any other tropes you heard about Next Gen? Holodeck being bad. Steven agreed with that. Q being annoying. I think Steven agreed with that. I don't necessarily agree with either of those. The holodeck's bad and Q's annoying. But I get where you're coming from. They
have their moments, though. They do have their moments.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't feel as strongly as you about them.
That's not really the way I would summarize it. I don't know if I've heard Q being annoying, but the holodeck thing, the trope is that always breaking, essentially, or always that being.
Well, it does. It probably works for 170 of these 176 episodes. We just get the 6 episodes where it broke. Yeah. And I get that. That makes sense. You don't want the story where the holodeck's working.
But even there, what's the Moriarty episode?
That was breaking, right?
Yeah. What's the name of that one?
Which one? Elementary Dear Data?
Elementary Dear
Data? Or Ship in a Bottle?
Ship in a Bottle.
Ship in a Bottle is a return?
Is that a Dixon Hill? Oh, that's when Moriarty. Yeah.
Which was it was a great episode.
There's a couple that are, again, the holodeck screws up, but they are good episodes. The trope of higher beings' powers testing humans, that one held true. I feel like
that carried over from the original series.
Not good ones. Yeah, you're right. That was passed down. So yeah, the TOS can accept blame for that one.
Honestly, that is the biggest trope that held true between TOS and TNG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, not sexual assault. No,
thankfully. Yeah.
Thankfully. Yeah. Higher godlike beings doing their crap
Yep.
was the trope that held true between them. Not
only
red shirts
35
dying.
people living on any planet, even though there's supposed to be millions. We would
That
only
one
see
too.
40.
Budget for both, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. 2 questions. What would season 8 have looked like had they continued next gen? Any good thoughts on that?
My
Would
thought was
have looked like a comic book.
I didn't do a comic book of next gen season 8.
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
I just asked what would next gen season 8 have looked like. They didn't make a comic book of that one.
Right, as Buffy Angel joke there.
Right, Buffy
would have
did
looked
it.
like
The original Star Trek did it. They did years 4 and 5 in comic book form.
Yeah.
Really?
For the 5-year mission. Yeah. Recently, like within the last 10 years.
Oh, okay.
They're critically acclaimed. They're thought of as really good. I've bought them. I haven't read them.
I feel like season 8 might have gone to something we talked about. People would have got mad about probably again, even though it wasn't their crew at first, or maybe it was their crew. Crew changes, either new people coming in or people going out. I think it would have been the time for it, and I think that could have been a positive spurring thing, new relationships and that kind of stuff. Like when Jellicoe would come in or one of those things would come in for more than 20 minutes. I thought that spurred good things. My concern would be that it would have just been a continuation of season 7 and more malaise and just like, somehow Grey's Anatomy is still running. So anyway,
I agree with you. You're begging for a new character if you continue this series for season 8. I would have liked to have seen more character development in season 8, though. At season 7 play out the way it did, and you go into season 8, I think you need to develop the card forming bonds. I think you need to develop Worf and Troy as a relationship, and that could have been cool. But
yeah, and bringing new characters can be tricky. It can be like Cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch. So
Cousin Oliver was the new con officer. He took Wesley's ship.
Yep.
Seat.
Yep. So.
Oh God, that would have been awful. Yeah, I don't think we should have had a season 8. I think next gen ended when it should have ended.
Yep. I think so. It feels right.
Last question, and this is mainly for Steven, because I know Keith and I have both seen a bit of what's to come. But what would your hope for the future of these characters be?
So my thought was, hopefully some of the TNG DNA lingers in a good way, because there's a lot of good DNA there. And I just hope it goes more, and this is going to sound like I'm bagging on one of these 3 shows, but goes more the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks direction than Discovery. Discovery, fine if they do a season arc, but we've talked about it a lot, that I really like the characters on Discovery. I just wish they weren't trying to save the universe every season and had a little more fun. And
Agreed.
So far this season, I think they're trying to go that way, but I don't think they're going to get there. I don't think they're going to stay there.
I mean, we avoided, again, we've only seen 2 episodes, but we avoided making Book the XO, and you brought in a really cool new character.
Yeah, I do like that.
That gives me hope.
Yeah. And that's how you bring in a new character. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that new character. Anyway.
Yeah.
I wish she got more than 1 season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there are some lessons learned in Next Gen. I think allowing character development, which they did a little bit in the final season, is carried over into other Star Treks. I think the Next Gen characters are popular enough. We're going to see them again, not just in their films, not just in Star Trek Picard season 3, but I think there's reason to keep coming back to this well. Despite the peter out of an ending, which is weird because the series was still really popular. It didn't go out because the ratings were sagging. It went out pretty high. It did feel creatively like it was sagging. And I'm glad we found ways to bring back characters and plot that were not continuing the sag, but finding new life in these people because they deserved it and they could definitely support it.
And maybe it's time and money and all that kind of stuff, but either way, it's much more satisfactory, I think. So.
Keith, any other final thoughts?
Is this on the hopes for future Trek subject? Or
yes, and also just in general for Next Gen wrap up, because like I said, we'll figure out the best episodes via email between the 3 of us, but other than that, we're closing the book on Next Gen. Other than the films, of course. Generations will hit the speed in like 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think the wow, words won't come out right. that I think the worlds around them should be fleshed out a little bit more. I think so. We always end up enjoying it when it's something that's not focused on the Enterprise in particular.
Yeah.
They kind of well, that was one of the biggest things about DS9, really, is getting a peek into what the world. You know what I'm saying? Like the fictional world of Trek looks like when you're not on board that one ship.
Or once that one ship leaves, what are the ramifications? Was DS9 because they don't leave, you have to deal with the ramifications.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, Data freaking needs to put in the emotion chip, right?
Yeah.
I honestly, I felt like the series, they brought it back up in the final season. If they continued the series, they would have needed to insert the emotion chip.
I keep
feel like
forgetting
we
it
hit a
exists.
wall with Data. We hit a wall with Data.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the end of our wrap up for Next Gen. We're going to finish DS9 Season 2 here. Then we're going to get into DS9 Season 3, followed by, very closely, we're going to do Star Trek Generations. We're going to start Voyager. We're going to be doing air date orders, so back and forth, some more with DS9 and Voyager. Until then, live long.
Which I'm going to have to do so we can discuss Picard on this podcast.
We've already seen it all. Seen everything.
Oh, Steven hasn't. We wanted to. You and I have.
Yes.
Prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?